Shoot. Okay. Oh, where? Okay. Oh, that's right. That's right. It's not. You're too early. You're not too early. Are you supposed to be late? If you're supposed to be late, then you're too early. You're 1 minute late. If we're following the rules. It's good to see you. Regardless. Where's the new baby? Where is it? I forgot. Do you guys know? Do you know the gender yet? I don't like saying that word anymore. Do you know the sex of the baby yet? Pastora. The lovely Pastora. Always lovely Pastora. Pastora's such a doll. Good God. Good God. Interesting. Lil. Booking it up as we speak. I'm not due it until New Year's. God, that seems so far away, but it'll be here so fast. Only about 10 weeks, so it'll be another 10 weeks until we know the gender. Yeah, you got some time. Do you guys do the whole gender reveal thing? Is that a thing that you do? Are you gonna know? I feel like I asked these things last time, so I apologize, but I would like to know again. It's like getting good news that you didn't remember twice. It's twice as exciting, you know? Love you, Pastora. Beautiful person. All right, while we wait, we will be changing the Bible study deal a little bit because you voted for it. So on Sunday, starting next week, Ghost, what's up? Starting Sunday next week, we'll do Old Testament, which I think was the right call. I think it'll be good. The only fear I kind of have is like, there's so much space in between them already. And I just worry people are going to fall out of sync with what we're reading. So I might have to like do a quick recap every week. I just got to see. That'd be like another thing that I have to do. So I just got to see like what's feasible or not. But regardless, I think it's a good idea. I think it's cool because then we'll burn through some of the Old Testament, some of the New Testament. It doesn't get boring. It's very different, like drastically different from day to day. So I think it'll be good. We did a gender reveal with my family the first time, but this time we'll just do something small with our kid. But yes, I want to find out ASAP. Yeah, I would not be able to go through the whole deal not knowing like what was in there. I would like to know what is in there. Are we making like pizza or are we making croissants? It's a very different thing. It's a very different thing. I do want to say too before we start, and then I'm gonna roll right in, but I saw some stuff in Discord this week, just spectating, of people like being really kind to each other and respectful and understanding and like talking through some things. And it was really cool. I just want to say, like, as to sound like a total asshole, but I'm real proud of you guys and like what was happening in there. It was very nice to see. So I hope that can continue. Genuinely, I'm not being sarcastic at all. I thought it was really cool. It was very grown up, which is awesome. It was very grown up. It's just one of those things you got when you're in the religious sector. You're either an asshole or you're understanding and you learn how to deal with people who disagree with you. I don't believe there's really a middle ground. You're either an asshole or you're respectful and you learn how to live with people who disagree with you. I rarely fought with anybody in seminary. I disagreed with everybody in seminary. Not everything needs to be said. Sometimes you say your piece, but then just shut up and leave. There's many different options, but jumping down each other's throats, in my opinion, is just never the right option. It's never good for anybody. It doesn't serve anybody. And if you're calling yourselves a church, it's absolutely wrong because it does nothing but sow discord. So it was really, really cool to see, and I hope we can gonna keep on that track. I rarely get to chat with y'all anymore, and I want everyone to know I already miss you all dearly. Life has been rough. That's a word for it. Sweet girl. What kind of analogy even is that? You guys are adorable. All right, so tonight we have the ending of 1 Corinthians. Let me get the music out of my ear before I lose my mind. Ending of 1 Corinthians, which seems very out of place, but it also makes sense considering things that we'll talk about. And then I do want to just try to burn through the first chapter of 2 Corinthians. So Thursday, we'll pick back up in 2 Corinthians, but then Sunday, we'll start a book of the Old Testament that you guys will pick. I'll throw out like 3 to 5 in a poll, and then you guys can pick there. And I'll also have an option to do it chronologically, as best we know, chronologically, which is kind of where I'm leaning, so I might just decide that. I got to see. But I think it'd be good to kind of see how things progress to the best of our knowledge in chronological fashion. The floof. Okay, so the collection of saints. So the wrapping up of 1 Corinthians, all of the garbage in this text, all of the people sucking throughout the entire text, all of their problems. This church is absolutely lost. They're totally broken. There are people who cannot get along. They disrespect each other constantly. They're still engaged in pagan stuff. They're bringing pagan stuff into the church. It's basically what the church is today. It's a mirror image. All of that in consideration. He says, now concerning the collection for the saints. The collection is what you think it is. It is not necessarily the gathering of people. It's a collection. This is when people say there's nothing about tithing in the Bible. There's not in the way that it's taught today, but there's certainly mention of tithing in the Bible. There absolutely is. So now concerning the collection for the saints, as I directed the churches of Galatia, so you also are to do. It's a directive. On the first day of every week, controversy here, but I'll come back to it. On the first day of every week, each of you is to put aside and store it up as he may prosper, as you earn, in relation to what you make. Not 10%. I'll say that. In relation to what you make and is feasible and makes sense, as he may prosper, you are to put it aside and store it up, so that there will be no collecting when I come. Purpose is for you to do it of your own fruition. Not so that when Paul shows up, when the pastor shows up, you feel guilty or you feel obligated, and then you give at that point. This is something you do every week on your own so that it doesn't have to be done when the person in authority shows up. It's something you've already been doing. Verse 3, and when I arrive, I will send those whom you accredit by letter to carry your gift to Jerusalem, which is where the tithe was going. If it seems advisable that I should go also, they will accompany me. So verse 2, on the first day of every week. It's one of several points. Acts 20 is another one where that sentence is used. On the first day of every week. It adds some validity to the concept of Christians experiencing and practicing on Sunday, not Saturday, which was the Jewish thing. There's a lot of argument all the time in theological circles from people about, well, why do Christians celebrate? Why do they put the Sabbath on the Sunday? That's not it. They changed it. It doesn't make any sense. Well, it's what people were doing. It's what the early church was doing. So far be it from modern Christianity to change it. But I wouldn't be surprised if they eventually did. But it adds validity to that. So the first day of every week, Sunday, was to celebrate the resurrection. Therefore, it kind of makes sense why the Jews don't understand it. They don't believe in the resurrection. Then he said, as he may prosper. Depending on your translation, it might be drastically different. It doesn't really matter. It's just different translators trying to help you understand what is being said. But what is being said is that it's not a particular amount. It's not a specific 10%. What he's saying, like I said earlier, was just that this is something you store up on your own, of your own fruition, not under pressure, not under obligation, and that it is proportionate to your economic status. It's proportionate to what you make. It's not 10% to somebody who makes $200 a week. It's what is feasible for them. That's what he's directing. Nothing more, nothing less. I will visit you after passing through Macedonia. For I intend to pass through, where? Macedonia. And perhaps I will stay with you or even spend the winter so that you may help me on my journey, wherever I go. So it's one of the, this is what's like hard. I wish we could read Acts and Corinthians side by side, because it's like they go parallel, basically. So the mention of Macedonia, this is another it's another point of validity to show that even, if the Bible was all just lies, they did a damn good job of making things line up pretty well most of the time, which makes you think that it's not lies. It's the truth, because the truth is easier to convey than a well-orchestrated lie, especially back then. So this here in 5 matches Acts 20, in where it depicts his journey surrounding Macedonia. This matches. So it's a point of validity. It's good to see. Then he said, I will stay with you or even spend the winter. Just like a weird, interesting thing is that you got to think, like, how was Paul traveling? Was he on a camel? Was it like a Tesla situation? It was ships. He was on the ships. And sorry, hold on. There you go. Sorry. He was on ship. So after like August, September, October, sorry guys, I just realized the freaking Discord thing was on. I knew I should have looked at the chat, and I decided to just keep going, so I apologize. We're on 16:6, where he said, I will stay with you even spend the winter so that you may help me on my journey. In where he was geographically, the winter months began from basically September into October, November. Not too dissimilar from here. But starting in like late August, from what we can tell, the weather began to get bad. So it would interrupt and it would change the way that the apostles, specifically Paul, would travel. So what he's saying is like, I may have to bunk with y'all for the winter because I possibly will not be able to travel by ship, which is how I have to move at the time because of how long this is taking. I might get hung up and you may have me through the winter. Yeah, good. So 7, for I do not want to see you now. This is my favorite part, man. This is my favorite part. And actually, let me look before. I hope I didn't miss anything else other than you guys telling me I didn't have the Bible out. No, that was it. Okay, good. Yeah, so 16, 7 now, 16:7. Is it possible that they attend service on the Sabbath and Sunday service? I mean, it's certainly possible. What would make you think that, though? Is there something that you saw that makes you consider that as a possibility? Or is it just like a thought? It's certainly plausible. I would think that, especially like some of the early churches where the Jewish tradition was really rooted in the Christian church, like you got to think all these churches that Paul talks through and planted, they all kind of have their own problems. A lot of them are the same, but some of them are pretty drastically different. Like the issues at Corinth were pretty drastically different than the issues of some of the other churches that had really deep roots in Judaism, where he's talking to them about circumcision. He's down their throat about circumcision. Paul doesn't talk to Corinth about circumcision at all. It's not a problem they have. Some of the other churches did have that problem. So Paul would be down their throat about circumcision. Shut up. It doesn't matter. You're talking about the law. We're freed from the law. Blah, 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 blah. Why it's like pertinent, though, is that when you ask the question of, well, maybe some of them attended service on Saturday also, or Saturday instead of Sunday, it's definitely plausible, because if some of these churches were very rooted in the Jewish law, it wouldn't be shocking if some of them were holding the Sabbath on Saturday, even when some of the other churches were not. I think it's a good question. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if we really have anything to like substantiate it, but it's a fair thought, I would say. This is my favorite part. It's verse 7. He said, "For I do not want to see you now, just in passing. I hope to spend some time with you, if the Lord permits, but I will stay in Ephesus until Pentecost. For a wide door for effective work has opened to me, and there are many adversaries." The only reason I wanted to point 8 and 9 out is because last week he had the comment about battling beasts in Ephesus. And I said, like, there's a camp of people that believe he literally battled beasts, like in some kind of Colosseum. I don't know that there's anything to substantiate that at all. I'm pretty confident there's not. So it was more likely that he was talking about a more governmental beast, a more religious beast that he was dealing with the church at Ephesus. This adds some kind of validity to it, because he says, "But I will stay in Ephesus until Pentecost, for a wide door for effective work has opened to me, but there are many adversaries." It kind of shows that he wasn't talking about a literal beast. It's unlikely. He was probably talking about religious people or some kind of government interference with what he was trying to do at Ephesus. When Timothy comes, the Timothy everybody knows, that's the Timothy. When Timothy comes, see that you put him at ease among you, for he's doing the work of the Lord as I am. So let no one despise him. Help him on his way in peace, that he may return to me, for I am expecting him with the brothers. Timothy was obviously like Paul's boy. They did things together. Timothy was kind of like his protege in a way. There's a lot of theories that Timothy actually wrote some of the epistles and Paul dictated them. We'll actually at the end of this one talk about it briefly, but it's possible for sure. It's actually like it's highly possible. There are also theories that Paul had nothing to do with some of the epistles and Timothy wrote all of them, just kind of in Paul's name. I don't know about that. I don't think there's really anything to suggest it, but it's possible. Timothy was at Corinth, on his way to Corinth here, and then he left, and then he would return to Corinth as kind of the liaison. He'd come back to check on things. There's indication here that the Corinthians were kind of being assholes to some of the pastors, which we also know from the beginning chapters, where he was lecturing them on them dividing their loyalty between the pastors. You had Apollos, you had Cephas, you have Timothy, you have Paul, where everybody was kind of idolizing whoever they liked the most. They were idolizing the individual instead of the message. And Paul was kind of on them about it. This adds to it a little bit, because you can tell that there's some kind of headbutting going on. There's some kind of weird context between the congregants and some of the pastors, which is just an interesting thing to kind of understand. The tension between Paul and some of the Corinthians is tangible. And it's proven here when he's basically lecturing them on how to behave when the other pastors arrive. So Paul's urging them to put him at ease among you, which is just be kind to him, be nice to him, treat him right when he comes. The fact that he has to say that kind of speaks volumes. Now concerning our brother Apollos, again, a mention of a pastor, I strongly urge him to visit you with the other brothers, but it was not at all in his will to come now. I asked Apollos to come and see the church. He does not want to see you guys right now. He has no interest in coming to visit the church right now, is exactly what is being said. He did not want to visit Corinth because he did not want to cause more division in the church community. It's also highly plausible he was literally angry with them and did not want to go. It's not enough to know 100%, but the language is relatively strong. It was not at his will to come now. His will is a telling term. So he had no interest in spending any time with the Corinthians at the moment, which is just kind of funny. That's an interesting point. I've always felt like we preferred certain priests over others, probably because of their sermons and delivery. It's just personality, right? People get tied to the personality. You get tied to the delivery, like you said. You get tied to like certain little nuances of the individual. and you get blinded to a point on the actual message. It's wrong, but it's reality. It's one of those things. Like I do it for sure. But I also like dry stuff. But there's an absolute truth in the fact that, like, if somebody can hold your attention, you're going to listen and retain better. Period. The problem is that a lot of the time the guys who can harness your attention are also not delivering a great message. They're watering the message. It takes a very special kind of person in general to teach something that is very dry or technical in a way that is fun and engaging. It's very hard. Usually you have to give one up. If you're going to express the information in truth and in full, it's really hard to also keep people's attention in 2024. They just don't go together. It's very difficult. It takes a special person. What ends up happening, that I complain about all the time, is you end up hearing a story about the pastor's dog and his wife and their vacation and how somebody did this at the grocery store, which helps to get a point across, but it becomes like 30 minutes out of 45 of a sermon, which is not okay. In my opinion, it's not okay. But to dislike, Nat said, but to dislike or disrespect any is probably the issue. Oh, Father XYZ is doing mass today. I'm going home. Not so much. But it happens all the time. Even when I was working in ministry, you'd hear people grumbling when they saw a certain pastor get up. They're like, wasn't that good? Wasn't that engaging? It's just true. Mikhail said, sadly, yes, we tend to be seduced by pastors and evangelists. Oratory prowess, way of speaking, and like Joe says, their personality. Masks. Yeah. It's sad. But it is reality. So like the people who really know their stuff, they have to figure out how to be engaging to some degree. Or they just have to be lucky enough to have a personality that helps people listen to them. Where even if they're dry, people are like down to sit there and hear them talk for 45 minutes and will retain what they're saying. But that takes like a specific kind of person. Now, so my favorite priest also once said that joy stands for Jesus over you. And I was like, well, yeah. Well, you win some, you lose some. That's beautiful. All right, so Apollos does not want to go. He's got no interest in seeing the Corinthian people, mostly because they suck. He will come when he has opportunity, though. Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, let all that you do be done in love. I just love that verse. It's an echo, and in my experience, actually, let me check. Yeah, they never show it. So this is interesting. Be watchful and stand firm in your faith. It's an echo of Isaiah. It's Isaiah 7:9. And it's said different places in the Bible in the New Testament. I think actually they're all by Paul, but I could be wrong on that. I don't believe any of them refer to Isaiah, which I've always just thought is really weird. It's a direct pull from Isaiah. If you don't stand firm in your faith, you will stand for nothing. I've just always thought it was really weird that the other times, like Paul always echoed the Old Testament, and the Bibles will always reference where he's pulling it from. And this is included, this one right here. It's not pulled. They don't show Isaiah. It's weird. It's interesting. But I love the verse. If you don't stand firm in your faith, you won't stand for anything at all. Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, let all that you do be done in love. It like sums up all of 1 Corinthians 13, which is the most beautiful part of the Bible. But this is why I like Catholic Church. They tend to be more stoic and not as charismatic, which I enjoy. It feels more real, ironically, because they're not just BSing about their family. Yeah, I agree. That's why I respect Catholic Church a lot. Catholic and Orthodox. It's no bullshit. It's just, here's the information. This is what it is. Just sit down, shut up, and listen, because that's why you're here. I do wish, like every church though, I wish they figured out how to engage people, like personally, engaging people in the actual activity, rather than just lecturing people. I don't like lecturing when it's about your dog. I don't like it when it's about the Bible straight up all by itself. But if you're going to lecture and not engage with people personally at all, no conversation, it should be just about the stuff. It should not be about their dog. 15. Now I urge you, brothers, you know that the household of Stephanas were the first converts in Achaia, and that they have devoted themselves to the service of the saints. Be subject to such as these, and to every fellow worker and laborer. I rejoice at the coming of Stephanas and Fortunatus and Achaicus, because they have made up for your absence. For they have refreshed my spirit as well as yours. Give recognition to such people. So these people were people who had visited Paul and were representatives of Corinth. So they were Corinthian church congregants who had visited Paul, who Paul highly regarded, meaning they were probably some of the people who were probably not elders. There's not really anything to say about that, but mature Christians in Corinth that Paul kind of alludes to at certain places throughout both texts. But these were some of them. Then you're going to get a little bit of Aquila and Priscilla as well. So the last year, 19, the churches of Asia send you greetings. This, really pay attention to this, because this is where some conspiracies come in. The churches of Asia send you greetings. Aquila and Priscilla, together with the church in their house, interesting, churches and houses, send your hearty greetings in the Lord. All the brothers send you greetings. Greet one another with a holy kiss. I, Paul, write this greeting with my own hand. Why the hell would he say that? Is it not to be assumed that he wrote the whole damn thing with his own hand? Maybe not. If anyone has no love for the Lord, let him be accursed. O Lord, come. The grace of the Lord Jesus be with you. My love be with you all. In Christ Jesus, amen. It is relatively accepted in academia that Paul did not write the epistle to the Corinthians. Doesn't mean he wasn't there. It doesn't mean he didn't dictate it. It means he didn't literally write it. It's relatively accepted. So again, some people believe that is Timothy. So Timothy is sitting there writing it, and Paul is sitting there dictating it. It could have also just been a scribe, and Paul was sitting there dictating to a scribe. What this shows is that Paul came in at the end and said, I, Paul, write this greeting to you with my own hand. This ending, 19 through 24. I wrote this to you because I need to add validity to the letter. What this could mean is that a lot of these false teachers, these philosophers that Corinth was obsessed with, could have been sending fake letters to Corinth. The reason people think that is because Paul does this not just here, but other places too. So it seems as though there's some kind of fraud happening. And people are trying, these false teachers, these heretics, are also sending letters and trying to impersonate Paul or impersonate higher level Christians to possibly alter the way the church runs, which is just interesting. So this is kind of his, hey, this was written by me for sure. It's my signature at the end. Absolutely, there's so many times I wish I could raise my hand during Mass since I have something I feel is of value or to add for the group. Yeah, that's the way church should be. I don't understand what we do for church right now. What we've ever done for church, really. It makes no sense. Sounds like something someone who's not Paul would say. Oh my God. I mean, that's true though. Reverse psychology. All right, 2 Corinthians. So Paul founded the church in Corinth between 50 and 51, 52. I've heard 53, but I feel like 50 to 52 at the latest is kind of like the accepted aging of it. It was during his second run in ministry. We know, again, because of Acts. After anywhere between a year and maybe a year and a half at Corinth, he then left to go back on missionary work. Then we know from there, he planned to come back to Corinth through Macedonia. That's what he's kind of talking about there. And then that's what he also talks about in, I believe, chapter 1 here in a minute. But things get twisted and turned, and that doesn't happen. So instead, he goes from, I believe it was Ephesus to Corinth instead of Macedonia to Corinth. That journey ended up being real bad. It was problem after problem, headache after headache. So Paul ended up bailing and wrote a letter to the Corinthian church as a response to what was happening. So when Paul heard about the Corinthians' positive response to the letter that he had written, he then wrote 2 Corinthians. This is the idea. The problem is that there's a lot to say. There's a lot to say that there was another letter, at least. There's a lot to say that there were even more than just 3, and we just don't have them. We'll talk more about that as we go through 2 Corinthians, but it's a puzzle that is absolutely missing pieces, and it's horribly frustrating when you really study them because you just don't have all of it, and it's annoying as hell because you can tell when you really get into this that shit was taken out, whether intentional or unintentional, it doesn't matter. Things were removed, and then an entire epistle, an entire letter, or several were, whether intentional or not intentional, disappeared from reality. A lot of warning of false apostles here, which adds validity to the end of 1 Corinthians in his way of sending the greeting. A lot of imposters of Christian pastors, a lot of false teachers doing their thing. It gets a little bit hot. So, verse 1, Paul, an apostle of Christ, Jesus, by the will of God, and Timothy, our brother, to the church of God that is at Corinth, with all the saints who are in the whole of Achaia. Did a advertisement just go? Sorry if an ad just rolled. I missed it. With all the saints who are in the whole of Achaia. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. So Paul, an apostle of Jesus Christ, by the will of God. Paul says this a lot. A lot. The reason is it's his way of validating his apostolic authority. He doesn't do it to all churches. He does it to some. And if you pay attention, it makes sense why he does it to some. He does it to the churches who question his apostolic authority. He does not do it to the ones that don't. It's a very simple thing. It's not him being cocky. It's not him being like power hungry. He doesn't do it to churches that he doesn't have problems that are exactly that. But he does do it to those. He's reinforcing, I am here by the will of God. I'm not here to have fun with you. I'm not here to provide this of my own fruition and wants and needs. I'm here for a reason, and it is that of God. Timothy is, it's Timothy, the co-sender of the letter, the boy who possibly wrote it while Paul dictated it. Regardless, his right-hand man through all of ministry and how we, get the pastoral epistles and all that jazz. 3, blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort. Do we want to go into that? No, I don't. I do want to go into comfort, though. So, the Greek. We see it numerous times, the Greek term for what English is conveying as comfort. It's a couple handfuls of times throughout all of the New Testament. It's unclear, really, what exactly the intended expression is meant to be. Comfort, from what I understand, is a fair expression. It's not a perfect expression. It can also represent things like being encouraged, which is very different from comfort. Feeling comforted or consoled is pretty different than feeling encouraged. So there's some issue with the translation there. So I guess read it both ways. It's one of those things, like, it doesn't affect anything really. It's just something to kind of just to understand and to know. Who comforts us in all our afflictions, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. For as we share abundantly in Christ's suffering, so through Christ we share abundantly in comfort too. Interesting phrasing. Christ's suffering is obviously his death and resurrection. It could mean other things, though, too, theologically. So it's something you could actually get into a little bit if you cared to. But the obvious representation would just be his death and resurrection, the persecution of Christ, the persecution from the religious leaders leading up to his death and suffering. You got to think, like, to a degree, Jesus was kind of like had a knife to his throat from the beginning. It started like very early on. It just wasn't always from the same group of people. It shifted. But from the very beginning, Christ was under some kind of suffering. He was suffering at the hand of some kind of authority. This is why I always say, like, Jesus was a effing rebel. The dude was not like, I'm going to hold hands with the government that is counter God's will. Jesus was from the beginning anti-establishment, in that the establishment did not stand for godly morals. If the establishment stood for godly morals, Jesus would have been right there with them. But they didn't. And they don't, I would argue, still today. Anywhere, really. So therefore, that makes Christ a rebel. He was rebelling against the religious system, the governmental system. He was also rebelling against, how would you say it? Basically a cultist system that was kind of different from the religious system. There was a clear distinction between the two, which I'm sure we'll talk about when we go into the Old Testament. Jesus was what the kids would call hella punk rock, bro. Hella punk rock. So through Christ, we share abundantly in comfort too. If we are afflicted, it is for your comfort and salvation. And if we are comforted, it is for your comfort, which you experience when you patently endure the same suffering that we suffer. Our hope for you is unshaken, for we know that as you share in our suffering, you will also share in our comfort. This is just like one of those interesting things that you want to like log in your brain for later reading Paul. This intro is interesting. Paul doesn't start many epistles in this kind of fashion. It's different. It's markedly different. So just like mentally log it, and then maybe we'll come back to it later. The Greek for hope is, we've talked about it before, but we'll talk about it every single time. It's different. Kind of like love in English is different than love when you're talking about Greek. Greek, I think this is one of the ones that like everybody knows. There are multiple uses of the term love in Greek. They all describe different things. Your love with your sister is different than your love with your spouse. Your love of food is different than your love of your daughter. They don't use the same words, which in my opinion makes a hell of a lot of sense, rather than saying I love tacos and I love my child. I love ice cream and I love my spouse who I've committed my entire life to and I would die for. It doesn't make sense to me. So the Greeks kind of had it right. Hope doesn't have as many, but it has several. So it's the confidence. The hope that is talked about in Greek in the New Testament specifically, most of the time, is a confidence. It's being confident in an outcome, being confident in an expectation, which makes sense when you think about how hope is used. Our hope for you is unshaken. For we know that you share in our suffering, you will also share in our comfort. Hope in the New Testament, the Greek, is used in relation to Christ, which is like it's meant to be a confident expectation or a confident reliance on an outcome, which makes sense. It's not like, oh, I hope I can get the parking spot closest to my job tomorrow. It's a very different thing. Now it said similar versions in Spanish, but even those don't get it across as well. Interesting. I didn't know that. So there's like multiple ways to say love in Spanish that mean different things. Is there? I didn't know that. I knew like very rudimentary Spanish when I was younger because I hung out with a lot of Hispanics, but I didn't know that. That's interesting. How many are there? Like how many different ways of expressing love are there in Spanish? Hey, for we do not want you to be unaware, brothers, of our affliction we experienced in Asia. Asia is a part of, it's a Roman province. Asia, we've talked about before, is Turkey. Today's Turkey. Today, Turkey, back then, Asia. Kind of confusing, but you just have to remember or Google it when you need to know. But it's Ephesus. In this example, what he's talking about, experienced in Asia, from Acts, from 1 Corinthians, we know that he's probably talking about Ephesus. So, for we do not want you to be unaware, brothers, of the affliction we experienced in Asia. Does that match with what we just read about him talking about adversaries in Ephesus? Yes. Does that match with chapter 15 when he's talking about battling the beasts at Ephesus? Yes. So do we know for sure that he's talking about Ephesus? No. But does it make more sense than just randomly guessing? Yes. So it's probably Ephesus. For we were so utterly burdened beyond our strength that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt that we had received the sentence of death, but that was to make us rely not on ourselves, but on God, who raised the dead. He delivered us from such a deadly peril, and he will deliver us. On him, we have set our hope that he will deliver us again. You also must help us by prayer, so that many will give thanks on our behalf for the blessing granted us through the prayers of many. So, Paul was persecuted all the time. The irony is there, because Paul was the persecutor for most of the time. But when he says, indeed, we felt that we had received the sentence of death, he's emotionally expressing the level of persecution they had received, that it was almost equivalent to some degree of actual death, which is a heavy statement. So whatever they were going through persecution-wise was a big deal, serious thing. On him we have set our hope that he will deliver us again. That's that hope, the confident outcome, the confident expectation of something to happen. In this case, the confident expectation for them to be able to endure the persecution and come out because they had a mission, they had something they were doing that wasn't over. So for the sake of the mission, they would endure. And it was the confident hope in knowing that they would. For our boast is this. Did I skip something? No. For our boast is this, the testimony of our conscience, that we behaved in the world with simplicity and godly sincerity, not by earthly wisdom, but by the grace of God, and supremely so towards you. For we are not writing to you anything other than what you read and understand, and I hope you will fully understand. Okay. Actually, let me look at something real quick. Amour is more specific to a romantic love. Then when you say you really like something, you're saying you love it, but not in a romantic way. You can say te quiero. That's what the Taco Bell dog said. What didn't he say? Yo quiero Taco Bell. Isn't that I like Taco Bell? Is that what it is? Or isn't it I want? I don't know. I don't speak Spanish, man. It's been a lot of years. You can say te quiero to a friend, but te amo is more to a partner. However, different countries, cultures kind of follow it more or less, which is why they're not as solid. Interesting. Is that I want or I like? Te quiero. Wouldn't that be, I don't know. I'm not going to keep pretending like I know how to speak Spanish at all. Bloof is laughing at me now because she can actually understand how ignorant I am with Spanish. Somebody teach me Spanish. Yes. I'm just saying, it's like, it's as a Caucasian man who grew up where I grew up, it's Taco Bell. That's how you learn that. It was Taco Bell. But then after Taco Bell, you learned it from all the kids you went to school with, in my scenario. But I'll never forget the first place, which was Taco Bell commercials. Are those still around? Do they still play those? It's kind of both. It's all context. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, 13 said, for we are not writing to you anything other than what you read. So, Paul had adversaries at Corinth. I would use that term because that's kind of what they were. And when I say that, I'm talking about congregants and otherwise. But he had adversaries, false teachers, philosophers, and then congregants who were just completely destroying the church. Paul had expressed to them very clearly what the expectation was, what needed to happen, how things needed to look, how things needed to run. So he's being a bit of a Paul and saying, we are not writing to you anything other than what you read, and understand. I'm not saying anything new or different. This is going to be all the same shit that we've already talked about. So I hope you will understand. It's sarcastic, which you just gotta love. 14, just as you did partially understand us, that on the day of our Lord Jesus Christ, you will boast of us, we will boast of you. Because I was sure of this, I wanted to come to you first so that you might have a second experience of grace. A second experience of grace. Tough. Other translations will have it pretty different. So I wanted to come to you first so that you might have a second experience of grace. I had come to you previously to provide a second proof. Depends on what you're reading. This is one of the ones that, like, it kind of changes what is being said to a degree. So I wanted to come to you first, or I came to you previously, depending on what you have. He sent his epistle to the Corinthian people about his intention to visit, his intention to go see them. When he didn't come, people questioned his authority. They questioned his apostolic placement. They questioned his commitment, his character, because he had said he was going to do something and then did not do it. So he said, so that you may have a second experience of grace. Other translations, again, are like, you have an additional proof, is what some of them will say. It's not clear exactly what he's trying to say, but Paul planned on going back to Corinth again. So once he was making his movements through Macedonia, and then on the turnaround back to Judea, he could just be talking about the swoop back in. It's not super clear. And because the translations in English are pretty different, it's hard. It's a really tough one to try to really understand what's going on. But it gets a little bit more clear as you keep going, but it's not enough, in my opinion. It's a weird verse that, like, doesn't have an obvious conclusion. I wanted to visit you on my way to Macedonia and come back to you from Macedonia and have you send me on my way to Judea, which is what I was just explaining. Was I vacillating when I wanted to do this? Do I make my plans according to the flesh, ready to say yes, yes, and no, no, at the same time? As surely as God is faithful, our word to you has not been yes and no. For the Son of God, Jesus Christ, whom we proclaim among you, Silvanus and Timothy, and I, was not yes and no. But in him it is always yes. For all the promises of God find their yes in him. That is why it is through him that we utter our amen to God for his glory. And it is God who establishes us with you in Christ and has anointed us, and who also put his seal on us, given us by his Spirit in our hearts as a guarantee. You speak English, Pastora? You must have had a great English teacher. In Spanish, we say translator, trader, because expressing in different languages is not easy, and many times it is not very efficient. They call translators traders. That's funny. Yeah, those are very different things for English-speaking people. That's really funny, actually. All right, so let's go through some of the stuff. Good God. So some of the Corinthian congregants, some of the people at Corinth, the churchgoers, again, they're accusing Paul of not being committed. They're accusing Paul of I mean, in some cases, in the beginning there, not here, but last epistle, of being a fraud. They're accusing him of not being dedicated to the mission because he said something and then he didn't do it. They're also accusing him of not having a steady mind because they see it as some kind of indecisiveness rather than him doing it for a specific purpose or a reason. He did it for a specific purpose or a reason. It was to not cause them any more issues, which he explained he explained in terms of Apollos at the end of the last, I guess, book, but the last chapter we just read, the last chapter of 1 Corinthians, where he says Apollos does not want to come see you. He doesn't want to sow discord. It would then make sense that perhaps Paul changed his mind for the same reason. I don't want to come see you because, in all love and respect, you guys are a shit show. And the people who have torn you apart, even though it's not their fault, Cephas, Apollos, Paul, Timothy, it's not their fault that the Corinthians all latched on to individual pastors causing issues, but they're still what is being latched onto. So it would make sense from a leadership standpoint to be like, yeah, I'm not going to go back there right now. I'll write you letters. Because if I come, it's just going to cause people to bump heads more and more and more. There was then the mention of the two missionaries who came with Paul, who were with Paul in Corinth. He includes them here. It's one of these like Saul-Paul situations, kind of. Silvanus is referred to as something else in Acts, but it is believed that it is the same individual. Maybe it's one of the situations where like they changed the name. Maybe it's an error on a scribe. Maybe it's something that got shifted during translations over the years. It's really like you're not going to be able to tell. But I believe they're the same people, and I'd say that like most of academia believes that they're the same people. It's the most common answer you're going to get. So in Acts 15, referred to as Silas, is likely the same Silvanus that is with Timothy here in 2 Corinthians. And then none of this is super important. We'll come back to this, some of this stuff. Already done, so actually maybe we should. Now let's roll through the rest. All right, anointed us and who has all put a seal on us and given blah, 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 blah. Do we want to talk about that? Hold on, y'all. No. Nope, not today. What do they say? Not today, Satan. 23. But I call God to witness against me. It was to spare you. Here you go. Spare you that I refrained from coming again to Corinth. I'm sparing you the issues that will arise should I come. Not that we lord it over your faith, but we work with you for your joy. For you stand firm in your faith. Yeah. No. Yeah, some of this will come back to because I want there to be more context. I jumped the gun a little bit on some of my notes. So some of this will come back to. Here you go, though. So we're done. So if this is all you were here for, feel free to bail. Thursday, we're going to do 2 Corinthians 2 and 3. Yeah, probably 2 and 3 because they're short. Probably 2 and 3. And then Sunday, we're going to start an Old Testament text. So every Sunday will be the Old Testament. Every Thursday will be the New Testament until those books are done. And then we'll just keep kind of cycling like that. So right now we're doing the New Testament chronologically, if you did not know. So if you haven't been at least somewhat with us the whole time, if you go back, you'll notice it's in chronological order because that, to me, that makes the most sense, especially to understand just like the timeline of who's what, where they are, where are they going, what is happening. I figure we do the same thing with the Old Testament, as chronologically as you can, considering. But I figure that would be like the best way to approach it. So start from the chronological beginning, and then to the best of our knowledge, follow the chronological order through the Old Testament. I'll probably post a poll, but I might just decide to do it like that because I think it's the best way to do it. Otherwise, we would just be randomly picking via a poll on what to jump around in the Old Testament. I just don't think it's the best. I'm probably just going to do it chronologically. But we'll see. So Sunday, Old Testament every week. Thursday, New Testament every week. And that's kind of how we're going to roll for now. Because this is sustainable for me for now. And then hopefully, eventually, we can move back into some other stuff when it's feasible and I'm not dying and Kat isn't dying. Are we going to read through all the genealogy? Hell yeah. Hell yeah, dude. For sure. For sure. And I'm going to slow it down. Read it very slowly. Or maybe I'll read the genealogy in a British accent to make it more fun. Maybe that's what we'll do. No, we're going to skip the genealogy for sure. For sure. That was probably the worst part about getting a formal education in biblical studies, was studying the genealogies and cross-referencing them with other things. It was disgusting and so boring. So boring. That's always the hardest part for me to read. Don't read it. Why would you ever read it? In my own reading, when I'm not literally studying genealogy, I would never, ever, ever, ever read that. It's not necessary. If you want, before you start reading a book and you want to understand the genealogy, Google the genealogy of this text. And then AI or some girl on YouTube will read it to you very quickly and be like, these are the people, blah, blah, blah. And then you're good to go. Skip, 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 skip. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't add that much at all. Just read the book. You'll if you have base knowledge, you're totally good. You'll begin reading it and be like, oh, of course, that is him and he is him. You for real had to do that. I'm proud that you're I'm proud that you're still here after. I don't know, I'd have to think about it because some stuff about seminary just sucked, but that was probably one of the most grueling, just boring as hell parts of it. Yeah, we had to do that. And cross-reference outside sources, try to go through old Jewish texts and see if anything connected. It was just god-awful. It was very bad. They're there as proof to the most extreme Bible nerds. It's true. I mean, they have a value, right? But the individuals they have a value to is 2% of people who read the Bible. 98% of people who read the Bible already have no freaking clue what's going on and are already really struggling to read the fun parts of the story where people are killing each other and stuff. They have a hard time retaining and focusing on that. So getting those people to read a genealogy, get the hell out of here, dude. Are we trying to discourage people from understanding the Bible? Makes no damn sense. But one thing that is cool, if you want to know the genealogy before you read something, look up a genealogy tree. Much easier. Much easier. They'll give you this really nice overview of a genetic tree, right? How they show evolution on the tree. And it'll have everybody interconnected. That's kind of cool to see because that gives you the visual representation of these dudes connect to these dudes, connect to that dude, connect to this lady. And it all weaves together. That's kind of neat. I just skipped an ad, so hopefully nobody got it. That's kind of cool, though. Those are neat. Fun parts where people are killing themselves. I said killing each other, I think. That's what I meant to say. I was thinking to take a theology course. I would not recommend it. As much as it pains me to say that. 5 years ago, I probably would have. I wouldn't recommend it now. I'd find free things on YouTube. I would never ever suggest somebody gets a, what is going on? Notes of devotion. I want to share my musical talent and host Bible studies here on YouTube. I've gotten a lot of encouragement to go ahead and do so, but I never know how much time I need to pray or fast over uploading one video. Any advice? Interesting question. It's a very interesting question. I mean, one, thank you for that. It's wild. Appreciate it. Interesting. So before uploading one video, advice on how much time to pray or fast. Really, that depends on like your relationship with fasting. Not everybody fasts. You could argue everybody should. It's like it's a biblical tenet. Everybody should. How people fast is kind of a different thing. I don't know if there's any reason biblically, personal relationship with God aside, because that like only you know that. But biblically, I don't think you'd need to do. Oh, I don't think you'd need to do any before uploading a video. Like the substance, I would do it before the video, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The uploading of the video to me is irrelevant. To me, it's like before you record the content, because the content itself is what you're pushing out into the universe. It's what you're pushing out into people's minds. So like before you record the content, before you write the music, before you start the Bible study, which I think is great, you should do that. Before you do that, you should have already done those things. I think by the time you're going to upload the video, it's too late. You already blew it. It should be done before. Because the content is what is going to affect people. So the content is what should be thought about. But it's for, like how much to pray or how much to fast. Like nobody can ever tell you that. And if they tell you that, they're liars. That's the thing, like you need to introspectively decide or pray about that and like see, I guess, what you receive from that. But I would urge you never to take direct advice on either of those things from anybody ever. Go to the Bible and then from that kind of delineate what you believe is the truth about it. That's the best I got for that question, but I would say don't even think about uploading the video for sure. Before you hit record is when you should kind of have yourself right. And if you feel like you need to fast for a day or you need to pray before you do it, then I think that's the time to do it. Time to upload is too late, my friend. Notes of devotion. Quick question to anyone here. Is anyone aware of any good, reliable sources, podcasts, YouTube channels, books, etc. that kind of retell the Bible without reading the verses verbatim, more like a novel? I've been thinking about doing that for years because I think that would be really good. There's no world in which I'd be able to have time for that. Try Bible Project or anything by, Michael's really good. I always feel like I explain stories to my curious friends in such an awful way. So that support how someone else makes it make sense will be very helpful. Michael has a way of opening up deeper meaning on popular stories. He's a Hebrew scholar. Yeah, he's one of the best for sure. And he's not super dry. You can listen to him. He's pretty deep though. It's pretty deep stuff. But it's real good stuff. For sure. There are books though too. I'd have to look. But there are some books that like the Message translation of the Bible is basically just a story. It is you cannot use it for Bible study ever. At all. You have to read it as like a story. Because that's what it is. But the Message version, which is like what you should read to your kids, when you just want them to learn the story, not anything about like the way anything's actually structured. That's why I've said it 1,000 times, I'll say it again. 1 Corinthians 13 in the Message translation of the Bible is freaking beautiful because it is written like poetry. It's gorgeous. It's fantastic. Bishop Barron is also a great teacher with unique angles on popular stories. I haven't really heard him on any like story recapping. It's like a super reliable source though. Yeah, that's all great advice. It's very, very good advice. Ghost, you read Pastor's mind. You read Pastor's mind. All right, I'm gonna get like another minute or two. I'm gonna get out of here. Spend some time with Kat before the week. But Sunday Old Testament, Thursday New Testament, every week. Probably chronological. Probably. Skipping Genesis because it's not real. Kidding. Kind of. I'm going to be super critical when we go through Genesis, though. I'll tell you that right now. Anybody who knows me knows this by now. So what that would be is likely Genesis and Job. Actually, hold on. Yeah. So it'd be Genesis and Job. And then you'd have Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And there's argument about whether Job was actually in that period. Joshua, Judges, Ruth. This is why it's so hard. I'm going to have to like kind of make some decisions on some of these, what I think. Because there's no agreement, man. There's no agreement. But the general order would be something to that effect. Then after Ruth, you'd have the Samuels, Chronicles, Kings, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs, Nehemiah, Esther. Where's Zephaniah? There. Okay, Zephaniah's in the 600s. Notes of devotion, great. Joe's answer is on point. It's personal spiritual introspection. Be patient with yourself because it takes years of learning to surrender ourselves to the Holy Spirit's guidance. For sure. I mean, it turns into like that argument of like, how many times do I need to pray in a day to not be smited? How if I don't sit, or if I feel uncomfortable trying to pray because I feel like an idiot who's talking to myself, that makes me feel guilty. You develop like those types of patterns when you put like a stipulation on it. It becomes a bad thing. It becomes like cleaning your room when you're a kid, or cleaning a toilet when you become an adult. There are things that you you need to do because it's good for everybody's. It's good for everybody's interest. You don't want to do it. It becomes something you don't want to do because it becomes an obligation. I would never say like, I have to pray and fast before I record a video. Have to. I wouldn't. But I'm sure there are people who do. And I hope that it is because they genuinely like feel guided to do that. I will not go to sleep without praying. I will not do that. But that is because I feel very driven to that. Extremely driven to that. That's something that I've done for like a very long time. For the first couple months of this year, actually, I started doing that different. So and then I'm gonna get off here. I started actually like getting on the floor of our room on my knees and like putting my face on the ground. Because at the beginning of the year, a lot changed for me personally. And I was afraid that I was gonna get cocky. And I was afraid that arrogance was going to spill into it because I was feeling really good about like where I was and what I felt like this year was going to be for me. And like, just like my placement this year, I had kind of like an epiphany, I guess you could call it. So the first couple months of the year, every single night, I got down on a yoga mat and I put my face on the ground and I prayed for like, 5 minutes or whatever. I stopped doing that, to be completely honest, because we replaced the carpet in our house. I'm gonna still look like a total asshole right now, but I'm gonna be honest. We replaced the carpet in our house, and now the floor is hard, and it hurts my knees. And then I just got out of the habit. So at first it was because I was a crybaby little bitch, but then I got out of the habit, and I just didn't think about it anymore. That's really embarrassing to admit, so I hope you appreciate that. But it's something that I've been thinking. Somebody's yelling outside. But it's something I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I've been feeling a lot of guilt about it. So I believe I need to go back to it. So every night again, I might as well start tonight because I just embarrassed myself. I'm going to get down on my knees, and then I put my freaking face on the ground, and I do a prayer there. What I normally did before that, and what I've been doing recently, after I decided to be a crybaby little bitch because my knees hurt, when we go to bed, I spoon Cat. So like I put my face in her back and I pray. Like over her, for me, from my kid, like whatever it is. But I felt driven to do that. Like I felt like I had to do that. Not out of obligation, but out of like, I have to. Because like it's what needs to happen. How long are you supposed to fast? As long as you want, baby girl. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like there's points in the Bible that talk to a degree about it. I think it's completely a personal thing, and to be completely honest, I think it's like it should be contingent on your health. People who are really physically fit, like people who go to the gym every day, you eat relatively healthy, you stay hydrated, you don't have high blood pressure, you don't have hypoglycemia or anything. Those people can fast for a couple days and be relatively unaffected. Somebody who's not physically fit, sleep too. If you don't sleep well, you don't sleep long, you can have serious issues fasting, and therefore you shouldn't do it. But in that case, just in blunt honesty here, because that's what I'm about, if you're really physically really physically out of weight or out of shape, if you're really unfit, if you're very out of shape, I'd say you reflect first on the fact that you're okay with that, because you shouldn't be. Some things are out of your control, but the parts or portions of your physical fitness that are in your control and you're just lazy, correct. I don't think there's any way to justify that God intended for people to overeat and engorge themselves. The Bible actually talks about it. There's no way to justify, not intentionally, but by your own hand, developing disorders or diseases because you are lazy and undisciplined. Those are things you should do. If the reason you can't fast is because of your laziness and lack of discipline, that is a failure that needs to be corrected. If you have something genuine and you do everything within your personal control to be healthy, then baby girl, you don't need to fast because it's not good for you. But if you are just a lazy POS and you don't want to do things because you're lazy, then baby girl, you're already failing. So fix yourself, because it's sad. And people will go around you, you know? I love seeing people who are like, you can tell they don't go to the gym. I love seeing them at the gym. I want to give them high fives, but I don't want to be an asshole and have them think I'm being sarcastic. You know what I mean? Like when I see somebody who's super overweight or super unhealthy at the gym, I just want to either hug them or like give them a high five and be like, you're a badass. Good work. Glad you're here. Don't see those skinny people here. At least you're here. But I feel like I look like an asshole, so I don't do it. I have high blood pressure. I have high blood pressure also. So exercise is one of the best things you can do for high blood pressure. So if you don't do that, I would say you should do that. Even if it's something at home, you should do that. Mikhail said, it depends, Graves. I fast for health purposes mostly up to 4 days, but you'll learn how your body machinery behaves and adjusts to fasting, spiritual or health purposes. Yeah, high blood pressure sucks, dude. There was a very short time where I took medication for it, and then I just kind of course corrected with exercising and food. And I haven't taken blood pressure medication in several years. Which isn't possible for everybody, but it's possible for many people. Yeah, dude, walk. Right after you eat, go walk for 20 minutes. It's not that hard. Just like, don't be lazy. Walk around your house. Like, people just walk in circles in their house. I rarely sit down. Like, ever. I just walk all day in my house, back and forth. That's one of the best things you can do. Just move. You just move. Keep moving around. It helps keep things steady, you know? It's so funny that, like, it's really just not that hard to be healthy. Before I got into the career paths I am now that suck, I was in fitness and nutrition. And just how jaw-droppingly simple it actually is to be healthy. It's just that people don't want to do it. It doesn't mean you're going to be super thin And jacked and, you know, Hollywood hot, it means healthy. You can be somewhat overweight and still be healthy. You can be pretty damn skinny and be healthy. You don't need massive muscles to be healthy. You can be healthy without all that stuff. It just takes like the activity. Magnesium, potassium, zinc, I assume you meant, as supplements, walking. Yeah, dude, that's all real good stuff. High blood pressure at 7, bro? That's a bit much. Yeah, I found it after I had like a seizure and had to go to the hospital. It was a few years ago. I'm an emotional eater, dude. That's a killer. That's a killer. You got to find something to replace it. Emotional eaters have to replace it. So every time the trigger happens, you have to, with discipline, turn to something else. That's, in my experience working with people, that's the only thing you can do. Because emotional eater is going to eat. So it's got to be replaced. All right. I just realized what time it is. I'm going to roll. I'm going to spend some time with Kat before the week starts. Sunday, Old Testament. This Thursday, we'll continue on 2 Corinthians. And then, again, I'll keep reminding. If you guys have another topic, if you have like something Christian, news related that happened that you want to talk about, if anything happens, or like freaking fitness, dude, if anything comes up or comes up in Discord that you guys want to talk about here, just bring it. Like somebody bring it or send it to me or whatever, and then we'll talk about it. But I am out. Have a lovely evening, and I will see you guys